Hello everyone. Today we shall discuss the story of Tess of the D Arbor village from the chapter 6th. In the beginning of the chapter 6th, we come to know that Tess has come back from Trentridge, and when she came back to her own house, she has come to know from her mother that a letter has already come from Trentridge and offering a job to Tess to look after the fowl farm there, and that she also came to know that the letter was written on behalf of Mrs. D. Arbor-Villay, the mother of Alec. The mother of Alec, Mrs. D. Arbor-Villay, was blind. She had a hobby of keeping different kind of fowls. That's why she needed a person to look after those fowls. At first, Tess refused to go there, and she said to her mother, in place of going to Trentridge, she would prefer to do some job here and earn some money to buy a horse for the family. She did not go for a week. During that time, she was busy in searching a job there. One day, in her absence, Mr. Alec came to the house of Tess, and he met the mother of Tess, Joan Durbeyfield, and he asked her what was the plan of Tess, whether she would come to Trentridge and do the job or not. It was the first meeting between Alec and the mother of Tess. She found that the young man was very handsome, and when Tess came back, she informed Tess about the coming of Alec and asking whether she would go to Trentridge or not. At last, Tess was ready and gave her consent to go Trentridge and do that job. So a letter of acceptance was dispatched to Trentridge informing that Tess was ready to do that job. Soon, the Durbeyfield family also received a letter from Trentridge and informing them that all the arrangements were made to bring Tess to Trentridge. Tess, in her childhood, wanted to be a schoolmaster, but the fate had a different wish for her, and she made it clear before going to Trentridge to mother that the purpose of her going to Trentridge was to earn the money only to buy a horse for the family, because she always held herself the responsible for the death of the horse Prince. That's why she thought that it was her responsibility to earn money and to buy a new horse for the family. So, on the day of her departure for Trentridge, Tess was deliberately clean dressed up by her mother, who wished to exploit her good looks and youth to the maximum. She prepared the daughter Tess in such a beautiful way that she believed that the daughter would win the heart of the young man Alec at Trentridge. Actually, all this was the plan of the mother. Tess had packed her luggage and it was sent to a place. Actually, the cart did not come to the house of Tess. It came to a place some distance away from the house of Tess. The luggage was sent and it was loaded in that cart. All the family members, including the mother, the children, they also went to the place where the cart came to bid a goodbye to Tess. When Tess reached to the place where the cart came, suddenly another cart, more elegant than the first one, appeared before Tess, and on that particular, the second cart, Alec was also on it. So there were two carts. On one cart, the luggage was loaded, and the next or the second one on which Alec has come to bring Tess. And he urged Tess to mount the cart, and she mounted the cart and sat down on it. And soon Alec started driving that cart. Soon they disappeared from the eyes of the mother. All the children, they were standing some distance away from that place. Alec was driving the cart very recklessly. That the reckless driving of Alec made Tess very frightened, and she requested Alec to drive the cart very slowly and cautiously, but on the contrary, he drove more recklessly, because Alec had some evil plans in his mind, and this speed of the cart greatly frightened Tess. And again and again she requested Alec to slow down the speed of the cart, but Alec did not pay any heed to the request of Tess. And while he was driving the cart very fast, he requested Tess to hold him by the waist. At last, to keep herself safe, she held him by his waist, and Alec again urged the mare to take the carriage at a top speed down another descent on the road. And this time he wanted to take the advantage of her helplessness, and he promised her that he would slow down the cart if she allows him to kiss her. And at last he kissed her. Again the place came the cart, slow down, and again Alec urged the mare to a high speed again. But this time Tess was wiser, and she let her hat blow off deliberately. She let her hat blow off deliberately, and naturally the cart was stopped. She got down and took her hat and refused to climb the cart. In this way, she decided to go the remaining portion of her journey on foot. It was about 4 or 5 miles, remember. The remaining portion of her journey was the remaining 4 or 5 miles. Alec again and again told her to mount the car again and again, but she refused, because she came to know about the evil design and evil plans of Alec. While she was walking, she was also thinking what she should do, whether she would go back to her house or she would go to Tentridge and do the job. That kind of thinking was going in her mind, what she would do. At last, because if she would come back, she would not be able to buy a new horse. And if she would go back, if she would go to Tentridge and do the job, then she would be able to buy a horse. That was the plan of Tess. So at last she decided to go to Tentridge and do the job and earn some money and buy a horse for the family. At last she reached the mansion of D. Upper Village. The name of that, the Slopes. At last she reached. Then she, after reaching Tentridge, she took the charge of looking after the fowls there. There she met a maid servant who informed each and everything about her job. She came to know that Mrs. D'Urberville was blind and she was about 60 years old. She also came to know that the inspection of birds every morning was a routine. So it was a daily routine that the old Mrs. D'Urberville inspected all the fowls and birds with her own hands. And she also advised Tess to be very kind to all those fowls and birds. The old lady advised Tess to be very kind to her birds. Tess was greatly impressed by the old lady who recognized her birds by the touch of her hand and could tell the state of their health and feeling. Tess was very much surprised by knowing the fact that the old lady could recognize each bird only by touching the birds. And she could tell the name of the birds also. Mrs. D'Urberville also asked Tess that if she knew the whistling, and Tess replied that she knew about the whistling, and but not perfectly, and with the help of Alec, and she practiced a lot, and at last she knew the art of whistling perfectly, and she whistling to all the birds, and that kind of job at Trentridge she started. So that is the end of the 9th chapter of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Thank you.